Thank you, Mason. So
Mhm.
thrilled to be here and to kick off this series. I think it's a great, much needed uh, information session to have for folks right
Yeah.
now. Yes, so I've worked in sales my entire life, and I also worked as an actor, and combine those two skills to help sales teams, business communication leaders have those conversations more effectively on video.
Mhm.
And obviously, a lot of my training as an actor comes through that, and created the Selling on Video Masterclass, which is an on-demand course that walks through all the steps on how to really create videos or have virtual conversations live. And then, of course, the book, which is a real how-to manual on everything you want to know and some things you don't want to know on how to connect on video. And you're right. I mean, it has skyrocketed, but it's interesting because I always tell people there's still a lot of ways to stand out in video today. It's one of
Mm.
those times in in your career where you can grab a distinct advantage by really jumping in and mastering this medium.
Mm.
Because there's still a lot of people that are using it because they have to, and that's what I'm seeing is people use it
Yeah.
because they have to.
Yeah.
Certainly, we were all sort of gently nudged into using video a couple years ago, whether we liked it or not. And what happened to most people was we said, okay, get a camera, get on Zoom, uh, get some lights, and go and do exactly
Mm.
what you did in person. And that
Yes.
is just some of the worst advice because you can't, it's a different medium, right? We
Mm.
didn't we didn't acknowledge, like, hey, you know what? You're going to have to communicate now. Everything you used to communicate in person with your entire body and all your physical presence and energy, now you have to communicate in this space where we can see 10% of your body language. Okay, go. And
Right.
there's nothing natural about that. And it reminds me of when, as an actor, most actors start out doing live theater, which is very much like live sales. You have that interaction. You can, you read people's faces. You thrive on that energy. And when I went to, I wanted to do some work in film and television, and when I went to my first audition, and I went in there, and I was like, uh, their action, and I didn't know where to look or how long I had to look at the camera and what to do with my hands. And, obviously I did not get that part. And I didn't get any parts. I didn't get any work until I took some on camera technique classes
Hmm.
that really helped me understand how we have to adapt our behavior for this medium. So I think we've done a real disservice to people by making it sound easier than it is, when in fact it couldn't be more counterintuitive. And so right now you see a lot of people they picked up some bad habits, and now they're just reinforcing them. And so it doesn't feel good. They're not getting the results they want. They're not getting response to their videos they're sending out, or their calls aren't going to a second meeting. And so they just feel like it doesn't work, or they're not good at it, and they don't
Mm.
really know what to do about it. So yeah, I think that there's a big difference between, a lot of people like, well, I've been on video for a couple of years, so I'm used to it. There's a huge difference between being used to it and being good at it, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
mastering it. So right now we got a lot of people just repeating behaviors that don't work. I'll share with you. I had a coaching call recently with a seller, and it's very, very common example of behavior that I see. Uh, I had a conversation with super personable, high energy guy, and he had great message. And he said, he had a lot of virtual sales calls, and he also was doing some outreach with videos. So he sent me a couple of videos, and I watched them, and I was like, who is this guy? Like,
Yeah.
this is not, I don't know this person. It was just a shadow of himself. And so that is often what I see, because people don't realize that the camera, first of all, takes away a big chunk of our energy. So
Mhm.
you actually have to bring more energy on camera because, we were talking about channeling energy. You have to channel it through, to the other side so the other person can feel it. And
Mhm.
sales is a transfer of energy. If there's no energy transferred, there's no emotion, there's nothing happening. So
And
it takes more energy. Also, people are typically seated when they're on video, and that's a low energy position. And we have this tendency to really go into business mode when we're on camera, or we're, and that just does not serve us on video, because video is all about reading expressions, and that's how we see how you feel. So I worked with him and helped him, find that peak energy level, find that personality, and be able to convey that on the camera. And, he started seeing better results, and his, people were watching past 10 seconds that, where they had stopped before, and
yeah,
returning his calls. And you can see an example of that on my website at juliehansen.live, of kind of a before and after, because it really is quite dramatic. And he was like, God, I didn't know. I looked before. I didn't realize I looked like I'd just woken up from a nap or something. Um,
I I feel like some of the biggest things that I tell people is just always smile. Like that's 90% of really what comes across in a video is just making sure that you're smiling, you're blinking, and you're breathing. Because if you can do those three things, also it really we've seen videos where people don't do at least one of those three things, and it really comes across in that video.
right,
So I think
right.
you're
Now,
absolutely right that
yeah, there's something that when we see somebody else like talking at the edge of their breath, and you're like, please take a breath. I feel for you.
yeah.
It makes us anxious, right? And I
Hmm.
would say smiling is one of the rarest things you will see on a virtual call or a video. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, just get on virtual calls and just count the number of times you see somebody smile. And when they do, it just lights up the screen. And, and of course, we want to be authentic. We want to have authentic expression. And so we have to really sometimes loosen up those expressive muscles, to be able to do that. And also, um, really get in touch with how we feel about what we're saying. I would say, if your face has nothing to say, why are you on video? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
a phone call. That's what this is about, right? And so I want to be able to know how you feel about what you say when I take the, without the sound. So if when I look at videos, I review them and I'm like, is this good news or bad news? Like, most people, I have no idea, because they have what I call resting business face.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, salespeople will tell you, I'm going to save you $1 million. And it's
And then
like,
they'll,
good news. I think that's good news.
mhm.
I mean, honestly, it's, and I get it. We've been trained to sort of be restrained. And so I often feel like I'm working with people to train, break all these rules that we created for ourselves in the 80s and 90s to be more buttoned up, because that doesn't read well on video. Guess what? You're an actor, because
Yeah.
that's exactly what actors do. And they aren't born knowing how to do that, right? It is absolutely a technique. And so first of all, I just want to acknowledge that there's something very vulnerable about being the only one on camera.
Mm.
It's because it's interesting. It's like when you take a phone call and you can't see the other person, it doesn't bother you. You aren't so self-conscious. But for some reason, we are the only ones on video. Most people just, the spotlight's like, oh. And what happens is what we're, our mental monologue that we're saying to ourselves. It's typically when we can't see people, and I know because I've talked to thousands of salespeople, they think, oh my God, they're bored. They don't like this. They're not interested. We go
Mm.
through this we don't think, oh, they think this is fantastic, right? And
Yeah.
so what happens when you think that, if you think someone is bored, you think they're disinterested, they're checking out, you maybe rush and you start to, skip through things, and you get nervous, and they're thinking, what's wrong with this person? Right?
Yep. That has absolutely happened to me. I've
Right?
absolutely been there a
And
dozen times.
and there is no reason to believe that they are thinking the negative. And in fact, it hurts you to think that. So I always say, imagine the best possible reaction, because they are there and you have to trust that. And so if I say something funny, I'm going to imagine that you're smiling or maybe rolling your eyes. Or if I say something interesting, you might be going, huh, you're thinking about it. They're
Mhm.
not just ever just, you never watch somebody and go with no thoughts, you have an internal monologue as a listener. And so we have to allow space for that. So you have to learn this pacing. And as an actor, oftentimes, I'd be having a conversation with, the other person in the scene, but I got to talk to the camera because that person is off, they aren't even on set that day. But I have to leave space for pauses. I have to really feel like and look like I'm having this authentic conversation. So I have to visualize that. And that's a part of the technique, right? Is that visualization, because it really is all what you tell yourself. And what happens is, if you imagine the best possible response, it brings out the best in you. Whereas the opposite is also true. So even if they are maybe not as interested, they might be by the time, they've listened to you a little bit, because you're bringing the energy up.
Hmm.
So yes,
Yeah.
it's a difficult skill. So it's a little easier with eye contact because you know that you have to look at the camera. Where in person, people may know they have to look at the camera, but they have the draw of the people on their screen, which is
Hmm.
so powerful that if you don't have a technique to counter that, you are constantly going to be, drawn to the screen. And that conveys all kinds of negative things, that either darting eyes or downward eyes. And that's another one of the things that I see very often on video, is that lack of good personal eye contact. But here's the thing, let's talk about what a perfect video is. What is that? You make no mistakes, you're, very, everything's, everything's lined up, you say things perfectly. Nobody's looking for that. Nobody expects that. A perfect
Exactly.
video is one where you are absolutely engaged in your conversation. You're conveying the emotions and the energy that you want to convey. You're talking to that person and they feel like you're talking to them. And you get your message across, and you leave space for them to have thoughts. It is not, oh, why do I do that funny thing with my eyebrow? Or, oh, I said twice. That we look for things that our audience often doesn't care about. And
Hmm.
so it's very important when you're, and we need to look at ourselves, because you can't afford to be in the dark about how your audience sees you on their screen. But as you said, it's very painful to watch.
Yeah.
Unless you have a very specific list of behaviors that you're looking for. Uh, things that matter to your audience, not things that matter to you. Those are often two entirely different lists, right? It's like, oh,
Hmm.
my hair was just, oh, nobody cares. Nobody cares. So what I put together a evaluation sheet, and it's got like 20 points of behavior that equate to how confident you come across, how credible. And you can't just say, did I look credible? It's like, no.
No.
What reads as credibility on camera? Well, we think people are credible and trustworthy when they make eye contact. So how much
Hmm.
how much of the time was I looking at the camera? Were my eyes darting around? That's not terribly credible, right?
Hmm.
Um, and what conveys confidence? Well, did I look like I was confident? Was my energy good? Was I, what conveys interest? Did I look like I was paying attention when the other person was talking? Did I have a appropriate facial expression that matched what I was saying or hearing? And if you have those things, it's much harder to go into this tailspin and go, oh, I'm just awful and I don't know why, and I'm just not going to do this anymore. We want that human connection. And like you said, it's those things that connect us, that we relate to.
Hmm.
Um, what we don't want to do is, oftentimes people say, well, I want to be myself. And of course, you have to be authentic on camera, because the camera's a lie detector. So if you're, whatever is processing in your brain usually comes out on your face. So we want to be authentic, but often people think, well, I'm just going to be myself, so I'm just going to be natural. And that sort of morphs into, I'm going to be comfortable. And comfortable doesn't read well on camera. right? Because when we're comfortable, we get sort of lazy and we maybe lean back and our energy goes down and our face doesn't have much expression. And it's very hard to want to connect with someone that's, again, not giving off that energy. So we have to be
Hmm.
careful. I would say you want to bring yourself to video, but it's not the you that's on the couch channel surfing, right? It's
Right.
it's it's you, it's the very best version of you, and it's the video version of you, because we do have to adapt some behavior, for instance, to, you know, talk within this frame and to look at the camera and to, you know, make sure that we're as expressive as possible. So we do have to do some adaptations and some new behaviors.
Hmm.
But we, you know, we learn new behaviors all the time. People that say, well, I don't, you know, I want to be natural. And I say, well, even as a presenter, when you were in person, didn't you adapt your body language so that maybe people could, you know, it wasn't natural to turn like this and so people could see your screen, right? So these are
Right.
just adaptations for this medium. So it's and it's really important as we go forward and there's more people doing video, because I think the difference between those who are just kind of showing up and those who have learned the skill set and mastered it is going to be pretty dramatic.
Mhm.
And the expectations are going to rise from your buyers, from your audience. They're not going to sit through a video that has no connection in it for, they're going to watch it 5 seconds and they're going to check
Mhm.
out. First thing you want to do is make friends with your camera. And I
Mhm.
think even if you've been on camera for a while, some of us have a pretty, you know, awkward conversation or relationship with our camera. And the camera is the lens through which your audience is going to experience you. So I was coaching someone last week, and you know, and she was a very experienced presenter, but she, you know, just wasn't coming across, and you know, just you know, I could feel like she was holding back and just not looking at the camera and all, you know, that whole behavior. And I said, you know, what's going on? Do you, you know, how are you feeling? She goes, well, I just hate being on camera. I said, you know, that's going to be a problem, because you probably heard that expression, the camera loves, you know, oh, the camera loves her or loves him
Yes.
because they take really great pictures or they're great on video. And the fact is, the camera's objective. It doesn't love or hate anybody, but it picks up how you feel about it and reflects that back. So when it says the camera really loves her, that person probably really loves being on camera, or at least likes it. So you have to start by really just having a friendlier relationship with your camera and just, you know, turn it on and saying, hey, this is stupid, but Julie said to talk to you. So here's what I'm going today. You know, I know it's silly, right? But you got to break that pattern and then and see it as your champion and your ally instead of your chief critic watching every move and going wrong, wrong. I would say also when it comes to eye contact, people get so overwhelmed. And I mean, there's two entire chapters just on eye contact in my book.
Mhm.
But I would start by, you know, it's if we knew, if it was enough for us to say, you know, look at the camera, you know, you've heard that before, right? We know eye contact is important. And if that were enough, we'd all be doing a better job of it, but we're
Mhm.
not. So clearly, you know, there's more to it. Uh, but one of the things I say is start by looking at the camera at one of those times when it really matters to the other person.
Mhm.
So Mason, so for example, if you and I were having a conversation, I was in your office and you were pouring your heart out to me and I looked like this.
I wouldn't feel as if you were really engaged. Definitely, definitely wouldn't.
No, no, you might think, hey, you know, up here, right? And we do
Mhm.
that on video all the time. People want to feel heard and seen. And so one of the counterintuitive times that we need to look at the camera is when people are sharing, when they're talking. Uh,
Mhm.
and so that's a great place to start. And there's a number of other key times I mentioned in the book when it really does matter. So that's a great beginning to good eye contact, just to think, okay, today I'm going to focus on when they're talking. I'm going to look at the camera as much as I can. That's another acting skill. So there's a whole technique set I can teach you, but I'll give you a quick hint. Uh, if you can memorize the first line of each section, and if you've gone through it enough, usually your muscle memory will kind of kick in, like you know what to say. And don't expect yourself to be perfect. You're not in a play where the playwright is going, oh, she skipped a word, you have some flexibility. So again, doesn't have to be perfect. But yeah, scripts are a whole thing. And if you use them, you got to use them well, because most people can tell when you're reading from a script. You want to contrast well with your background. And so you want to blend in. Black tends to flatten everything out. And there's no depth perception on camera yet. So that will make you look bigger and more shapeless, which most of us don't want. So that's not always good. But typically bright colors. I'm laughing because I have like a green screen color on today.
So don't wear that with a green
might
screen.
be problematic, but I don't have a green screen, thankfully. But what you really want to think about, and I have a chapter on wardrobe and makeup and hair and all that in the book, but you want to think about necklines, because it really is, that's all people see. It could be a really expensive shirt, but if it looks like a t-shirt neckline, it's going to look like a t-shirt, so just be aware of that. If you're in doubt, take a screenshot, send it to a friend and say, how does this look? That's a huge question. Yes. So if you are a gesture and you try not to use your hands, it will probably take all the energy out of you. So I don't recommend that. But you have to use your hands very specifically on video. We want to use them more. We want to be specific about placement. We want to be purposeful. We want them to support, specific ideas that we're saying, or we're going to talk about two things. Think about, I have a chapter on gestures in the book, on different types of gestures, but they need to support what you're saying and not distract from it.
Mm-hmm.
That's a quick answer. There's a lot of resources out there. I have books, I have workshops and coaching and classes. You can go to my website. And I'll just throw out there that I have an offer for One Mob users, which you're all welcome to use on the Selling on Video Masterclass, which is normally $297, and you can get it for $97, I believe, with the coupon code OneMob, oddly enough. So, and that will take you through all these techniques that will help you be better on video.